Queen of Flexibility.
We are.
And okay, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate and wanted to celebrate Occupational Therapists and Occupational Therapy Month.
Woo-hoo.
So yeah, welcome to your month on the podcast. My name is Germano. I am within the MM with the Institute of Clinical Excellence. And I just want everyone to be introduced to you, Lindsay. Lindsay, you are an occupational therapist, more than 10 years of experience.
Yep.
You are the EquipMeOT, specializing in home modification compensation strategies for and engaged in all aspects of life.
You bet.
That is quite the intro for you.
And I'm here. I'm monkeying with my tripod real quick. Can I get this set up so I don't have to hold my phone, so I don't make everyone sick?
Sure.
Hold on, just 2 seconds. I'm gonna get this set up. I'm sorry to your viewers here that I'm being. That's better. Now I don't have to hold my phone.
Perfect. Yes, that is never fun.
There we go.
All right. So I kind of want to just start off. If no one's following you, everyone needs to go right now to @EquipMeOT. It's the most helpful, useful resource. That you're one of the most useful people I follow. Like I know exactly what I'm going to get by following you. I know, that I'm just going to get so many tips and tricks and be able to share too your content with all the occupational therapists that I work with. And just better strategize compensation strategies for our patients. So if everyone's not following @EquipMeOT on Instagram, that's where you want to go. How did you start this Instagram page, or like what led you to this kind of work within the occupational therapy realm?
So it was by accident, as is many good things, right? Back in 2016, I started working in home health, and I found that so many of my clients were struggling with equipment management. They would be sent home from the hospital, often with a stack of equipment delivered to their house, and it was overwhelming. And oftentimes none of us had the time or the legal ability to help people install their equipment. There's certain reasons why we're not allowed to do that. So caregivers or the individual themselves are being expected to know how to do it. And so I was like, the instructions that come with this equipment, raised toilet seats, shower benches, shower chairs, grab bars, is very minimal. And so I wanted to create some quick use, shareable videos for people. And so it started on YouTube. I created, I think, 6 videos within the first year. And that was it. I set those videos up, and then I would share the links, and I walked away from it for 4 years. And I would look back every so often, and my husband, who's an entrepreneur, was like, these are getting a lot of views. Obviously, people need this information. And so I was like, okay. And so back in 2020, when the pandemic was kind of raging and my kids were in and out of school, I walked away from traditional clinical practice, and we started making video content full-time. And part-time. I say full-time, but it's very much a part-time effort with all the things going on in our household. But and now I have 80 plus videos available on YouTube to kind of instruct and guide people on making decisions about medical equipment, as well as strategizing how to use it for their specific recovery needs. And then on Instagram, I really started there to build a community. You don't get much of a community in the YouTube world. That's more library of content. Instagram is where I've met people, and I've been able to answer their specific questions. And for me, that has been the single most valuable, and incredibly, it resonates so much with me because I miss being in the community and working with individuals one-on-one, because none of us learn this stuff in the classroom. We learn it in the field. We learn it from the people living.
Surprisingly, don't learn this in the classroom.
No, we don't. And so my following is primarily a breakup of occupational therapists, PTs, students, as well as a ton of community members living with a variety of, disabilities, or simply just curious. They want to know what's out there and how it can help them or their loved ones in their lives. And there's a lot of areas in the healthcare system where people completely get dropped and missed. And I'm finding that a lot of them are coming to platforms like Instagram looking for help. And so I'm kind of filling that niche. It's been a really interesting very experimental. You know, starting out, no clue what I'm doing. I'm an elder millennial. So getting getting on a platform like this was a little intimidating, but it's been an incredible ride, and I hope to continue to do it as long as people resonate with my content. I will continue to make it. So
Amazing. So you're finding your audience on Instagram is a little bit of clinician, a little bit of family, some patients, like, or people who need. That's really
absolutely.
interesting. That's a cool community to speak to. Like, often people try to really niche down to like just like I'm basically just clinician facing. Like, I don't know how much it would serve people to like see my stuff if they were a patient, but it's cool that you can kind of tap into all of these different communities too.
Yeah, and I think that the interesting thing about a platform like Instagram is, you know, I create reels because video content is what I got started in, so it's really easy for me to translate that into reels. And those get spread out. Like, I have no control over where they go, right? They just get poof out into the world, and I really interesting, some inappropriate, but really interesting also some conversation points where people are legitimately just curious about what is going on. Why are you, you know, and so I'm able to then introduce people to what occupational therapy is, what the concepts behind medical equipment, how medical equipment doesn't always look like what you'd think medical equipment looks like. It can be beautiful. It can be super interesting. It can be super mundane. You know, it's like equipment that you already have in your home is actually very assistive if you really think about it. So kind of flipping the script on that and just like making people aware that this stuff isn't complex necessarily. And it's really cool to just see how that all grows from there. So I've loved it. It's been a really a wonderful experiment and a great way to reach people outside of that traditional healthcare niche.
You're probably just you're working with patients one to one, and you're now making such a huge impact, like across that, like tens of thousands of people are watching your stuff. So it's that your impact has spread tremendously just by, you know, maybe calling
Yeah.
quits traditional clinical model onto Instagram. It's really awesome. So
Thank
I
you. Yeah,
guess
it's been fun.
decide what to buy or like what equipment to try and buy. Like, how do
So
you what process you?
lots of trial and error. Initially, this was the easiest job in the world, right? I had a dearth of knowledge from my clinical practice. I had worked with hundreds of pieces of medical equipment, and it's amazing how quickly you go through all of that so in the first year, I was cranking out content on stuff I already knew about, things I had used in clinical practice. I worked in complex neuro, complex ortho trauma, so I had seen a lot of different equipment. Then I got through most of that, and it was time to start venturing into things I had never tried. I get most of it through Amazon purely for the convenience, and Amazon carries so many different varieties and brands, and it reaches into the the international communities, because I do have followers from all over the world: Australia, England, Germany, Switzerland, it's really Canada. So being on Amazon is a really good place for me, because then I can recommend stuff that hopefully can be found in other communities as well. And what I tend to do, I'm like pulling the curtain back here. I look up stuff that I'm getting questions about. So I'll have somebody say, hey, any suggestions on couch sag? My clients are getting stuck in their couches. What do you got? And I have some experience with some products. I'll look, and then you get the like suggested, like, oh, you searched for this. And then you dive down that rabbit hole. And I'm very lucky because I've had companies reach out to me and issue test units for me to look over, which is always greatly appreciated. I will say, for your followers, and if anyone is curious, I never get sponsored. I refuse to be sponsored because I don't want to have that potential ethical crisis on my hands of like, I'm being paid to talk about a product. I do get products for free on occasion, not often, but I do like to kind of put that out there, that it's like I'm not getting paid for these reviews. But yeah, I mean, it's a combination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like the authenticity changes a little bit when you know someone's like receiving payment or things for free, and you're just like, oh, okay, maybe do they really like this product or what?
Yeah, and I didn't want to run into that.
A week are you getting? Like, how many I said, how many Amazon shipments a week are you getting?
This is so embarrassing. I got 6 yesterday.
6 yesterday. That's awesome.
It's okay. So if I can't tell you the exact number, but I can give you an example of how much I get. So we have a puppy. Well, she's one now, but she's been with us for a year. And normally a dog, when they see somebody approach the door, will react. Well, our dog has been so surrounded by or constantly inundated by delivery people, she no longer reacts to Amazon. Specifically, she knows what a delivery truck looks like. She'll still bark if like we have a stranger or somebody come up, or like family visits or whatever, she'll react. Delivery drivers, lifts her head, looks at it. No, don't worry about it.
Fantastic. Okay, so how do you, as an occupational therapist, I really think occupational therapists are like brilliant at compensation. It is not the only thing you all do, but like you think about it in such a better way sometimes than PTs do. Like we kind of really hammer home that rehab side of things. Like I'm going to come in and fix all of your problems, like, and you're going to just get better. And I've realized, like, especially in the home visit setting, that sometimes that's just not feasible. Or I'm wasting a lot of time for this person while trying to get better. I could have done something to make their life easier, kind of in the meantime. So that's why I'm really grateful to work with my OT counterparts, because they're thinking about that while I'm stressing like the rehab side. But like, how did you balance like clinically the compensation piece with rehabilitation?
I think this is when you sent me this question, I got really excited because I love this conversation. And I've worked with just so many wonderful PTs in my career, and I cannot begin to thank PTs enough for what they do. And so I never separate the two. I start out right off the bat thinking in terms of both the rehab potential and the compensation strategies. I want to always leave people with options. And I think when you separate the two, we tend to become very narrow-minded as far as like what the ultimate goal is. So as an OT, we're trained to like break down task analysis and look at the functional goals and needs of the person that we're seeing. And oftentimes we get into the nitty-gritty conversation of like, but really, how are you doing? You know, because it can be so easy to focus in on why we're there, which is usually a specific injury, a surgical recovery, a deconditioning. We kind of can, and it's easy to get honed in on like that singular component. But because we get our evaluations are so personal when we're talking the ADLs, the bathing, the grooming, the dressing, using the bathroom, you know, how they're engaging in those daily functional tasks. I'm a big fan of using compensation as a kind of it's an icebreaker, right? We're not here to just like slam you with physical. Don't get me wrong, I think all of it is so important. It's a balance, but we can also give you some strategies to make life easier on the days when you're struggling, because so many of our clients have comorbidities that can flare up, you know, during a recovery process. So they have this surgery to have a knee replacement, but all of a sudden their rheumatoid arthritis is flaring because of or they had a car accident. We're dealing with a lot of trauma. So we may be rehabbing one thing while compensating for another. And so I love to just kind of keep it all combined in my practice. And so I think, you know, I think that's why OT and PT have so much value working together as a team. Because I lean so hard on my physical therapy counterparts to help me establish a good rehab protocol. I really lean into that. And then they will come to me with like, okay, they're struggling with this task. What should we be doing in addition to the rehab model?
Yeah, that's how I like to practice too, with like the company that I work for, how we can work PT/OT so like side by side. It's so nice to work in that space where I'm informing the OT on things that I'm seeing like functionally, like, hey, like so-and-so is like really struggling. And like we tap into IADLs like all the time. Like this person is struggling with like the calendar. Like I just noticed that it's taking them a while to work up their phone, like to put an appointment in. Just so you know, heads up, like that's also going on. And then the OT is communicating with me, like they really want to shower, but the tub is super high. Like, can you work on some type of like step over to like, can you really work on that hip flexion for me? And that's, I feel like how OT/PT should work. And I don't know where like our professions kind of diverged, or I don't know, like how we started to split the body with the upper and lower. And I don't know if that's coming from like up above to do that, but I know I'm grateful to work at a company that really loves that collaborative care approach where we're all working on like the same things, but just different angles, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really interesting because quality of care, since the the updates to Medicare in the last several years,
Mhm.
that focus on quality of care and preventative measures, keeping people out of the hospital, preventing falls, preventing infection, I think has really helped with increasing the motivation of our companies
Mhm.
to make it focused on that. Because when we collaborate, our results are exponentially better, and there's evidence all over the place. You can find research articles on that all throughout the allied health professional journal work.
Mhm.
And it's no doubt in my mind that we all benefit from that
Yeah.
collaborative effort. The patients the most.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes too, I wonder if like I don't know how the OT school like how that works for you all, but I almost like meet a lot of occupational therapists that don't know their scope. Like they don't know how big this scope is. And I
This,
feel is that an
yeah,
issue like setting you guys up for like not like I just meet so many OTs that they're like, yeah, I just do upper extremity injury stuff and then maybe some of the ADLs, but really miss out on that like IADL spectrum. And I'm kind of like coaching them. I'm like, you can do everything. Like I can't do anything. Like I'm really restricted. And I get really jealous of the scope of OT. But do you think that's like an
yes.
educational flaw, like a setup in school, or like where do we think that's going wrong?
In school, there's a lot of discussion of our scope of practice, but
Mm-hmm.
it's extremely intimidating when you're a 21-year-old fresh grad and you're said, hey, your scope of practice is the entire everything ever. And you're like a new grad and you're just like, I'm just trying not to fail. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to do the best I can with my patients. So you tend to narrow your scope out of pure fear.
Necessity.
Yeah, it's fear of messing up. So when you have a huge scope, and look, I lean into my huge scope now, but I'm 10 years in, right?
Yeah.
I've been practicing for 10 years. I did not lean into that full scope right away.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with incredible mentors who did, and that's another thing that's lacking, especially in the home health field, good mentorship.
Yeah.
We become fearful of making mistakes. And I think because of that fear, we tend to narrow ourselves. We tend to pigeonhole ourselves in what we're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have different strengths and different places we come from as far as experiences ourselves as healthcare professionals. What we bring to the table is a little different. And so, I have niched myself down to I love home modifications. I love medical equipment training, but I also have a deep, deep passion for neuro. I love doing vision training. So like over my career, I have spent most of my life trying to be as curious as possible. And if I can give any advice to any graduate in the allied health professions, PT, OT, speech, social workers, whatever, never stop asking questions, never stop being curious, because for you to truly gather all of the value from your scope of practice, you
Mm-hmm.
need to be asking questions all the time, because I guarantee you at 10 years in, I still am just scratching the surface of
Yeah.
what I truly understand about the lived experience of individuals out in the community living with a whole variety of conditions and disabilities. And that's really where it comes from, being curious, asking those questions. And I don't know if it's a deficit in the education process. I just think it's a reality of, how we have, being thrown into these very complex healthcare environments and having to, swim.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on. I'm watching one of my dogs who had a back injury try to jump off a couch. So, um, yeah, so that's just like a beautiful way to put it. I didn't even really think about that. That like almost like there's too much out there for you all to do. So like niching down is what's probably actually it's probably a great thing to have like a little niche that you're really good at. But it's hard when your scope is that big. So that's just a way to survive. Totally, that makes complete sense to me. All right. So I had a question from the crowd that was actually really smart. How do you get people to like? How do you convince people to use equipment? Like what? Like because I meet this barrier a lot. I was asking somebody to maybe consider using a trike instead of a bike because they really want to bike again, like mountain bike, or like not mountain. He wants to ride his mountain bike like on the streets, and I was like, oh, like I don't know if our balance is gonna be there yet for like either a while or never. So I was like, maybe like a three-wheeler or like something you sit in. So you can just like get out tomorrow, like go to the bike shop, try it out. And he was like, I don't think, I just can't see that for me. And I was like, but then you're just not going to bike. Like I was like, wait, this is the thing that's going to get you out there. So how do you have these conversations with people? Like, what are some tips you can give us to convincing people to that equipment is good? It actually makes them more functional.
The best thing that I have done as far as encouraging the use of medical equipment is one, demystifying and giving them time to process it. Because
Okay.
one of the things that I run into a lot is there's a lot of there's this theory of the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If I use that trike, I'm committing to never getting back on a regular bike.
Mm-hmm.
We know isn't true. We think of it as a stepping stone, right? If you're going to use this piece, it's the if I don't use it, I'll lose it. We hammer this home with people, and I think it flies very much in the face of our ability to get people to buy into using things that are really meant as, like we said, compensation. Or you may use a trike for a couple of months and then find you've built enough strength and endurance through the continued rehab efforts to now be able to get on your standard bike. These are, and I think that helps a lot. The other thing is finding others in the community who are also demonstrating the use of that thing. So like with the trike example, I really like that example because I know a lot of people who are like, ugh, because they are afraid it looks funny or they're afraid it makes them stand out in a way that they're not comfortable with. But if they start meeting people who are using those or just watching videos of
Yeah.
people who are successfully using them and how they're able to regain that sense of independence and joy that they had with their original thing, that can be really valuable. I, as a therapist, I think of myself more as I'm kind of like ushering you into these things, but I cannot force. You cannot, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink. You cannot force people to use equipment. And I like to make people aware. I like to leave people with a lot of information and let them kind of process it before I revisit. And so
Time is good.
time is good, but we're therapists. We don't have that much time.
Yeah.
And that's where my video content comes in. That's
Yeah.
that's why I started making it, because I was like, I want people to be able to revisit this. I
Mm-hmm.
want people to be able to see what this stuff looks like in practice on their own time in the privacy of their home, where they can really process this without feeling pressured.
Mm-hmm.
I always think therapists would make excellent salespeople. We are really innately good at convincing individuals to try something new and try something different. But ultimately, the decision has to be theirs and theirs alone, or it won't stick.
100%. I like the idea of like implicit exposure to think like just like, hey, watch this video, like there's a local biking group, like maybe, or just like that kind of exposure to equipment that might be uncomfortable. And your page does it really well because you have so much fun making the videos. Like there's just a video about like eye dropped and like the dropper thing. As somebody who has put in eye drops for other people who like recently had cataract surgery, as just like not part of my job at all. Like I was literally like, they're like, can you help us with this? And I said, absolutely. But you just make stuff so fun on the internet. So it's a really nice way, like this implicit exposure through social media for people to see like, oh, that's really cool. Like that thing to make the bed, like just to lift up the edge of the bed. I was like, I could use that. Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, exposure is so important, and making people aware of what is out there, and that it doesn't have to be clinical. It doesn't have to be sterile. We
yeah.
always think of like this equipment as being like the traditional like stainless steel grab bars and
Oh yeah.
ugly gray toilet seat. But there's beautiful, well-designed equipment out in the world, and I just want to show it off. I just want to make people aware. And that's a big piece of it. Breaking down some of those boundaries and barriers to just seeing what we don't know, what we don't know. So I'm
Oh,
happy to be the one to make goofy videos about it.
great. I think it's definitely needed. All right, so let's see. Are you finding like this adaptive equipment to be like covered by, like if they had to buy all this stuff on Amazon for themselves, are we finding ways for other people, like people to get it reimbursed, or like is insurance helping? Are community programs helping? Like I just think about those. Sometimes the people who need the most like don't have the financial ability to like purchase all these like things off of Amazon.
Mhm.
So have you ever found ways to like help with that burden?
So depending on coverage, certain states have, if you're a participant in like the Medicaid waiver programs of certain states, this equipment occasionally can be reimbursed if it is recommended by a professional who can create good medical documentation of medical necessity.
Mhm.
That is one way to get things covered, but as we know, that can be a very narrow window for people to be able to gain access to it.
Mhm.
Medicare isn't given much. They're going to give you a mobility device and a commode, and outside of that, they're really limited on what they're going to provide. I will say one of the cool things that I've been able to learn about is the volume of options for mobility devices. And I've been educating so many individuals on the fact that Medicare will pay for one mobility device roughly every 5 years.
Hmm.
Know your options. Don't
Yeah.
use, I have had so many people use their Medicare mobility device funds on a walker that costs $25.
Don't use it for the walker.
Don't
Amazon
do
sells
it.
them. CVS has them. Like, not.
Yeah. So, there's prioritizing what funds you will get from insurance. Some private funds. Now, I'm in the state of Michigan, which makes me unique in that up until recently, we had really high volume coverage for auto no fault. So that has recently changed, but that offered full coverage and workman's comp. You can get coverage for these items. So definitely, if you're somebody who qualifies for has an injury or something from workman's comp, if you have good therapy involved and good physicians who are able to sign the proper documentation, you can get equipment covered, fully covered through those insurance providers.
Hmm.
Outside of that, it's getting creative. I'm a huge proponent of following your local disability advocate groups, whether that's funded by your state millages, the senior millage programs for your individual counties will often have low cost or free options for medical equipment of stuff that's just been donated.
Yeah.
I mean, and this ranges from a toilet seat riser all the way up to hospital beds that
Hmm.
people will just donate. They'll take the tax write off. They don't have to, and they feel good about that donation, and it'll be passed down, and the savings will be passed down to somebody else who needs it. So definitely looking into those other options is so, so important. I
Yeah.
also, I always say this with a grain of salt. If you're buying used equipment, do not assume it's in perfect condition. Make sure somebody who knows what they're looking at can evaluate it for its, for its functionality, because I have run into that where you're getting something that's supposed to work and it's not.
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's fully functional before committing to used supplies.
Hmm.
Less is more, right? Less is more in the equipment world. I may throw out a lot of options, but when I get down to the nitty gritty of working with a person, I'm going to focus on the most high priority and the highest value bringing items first, because I know we're working on limited budgets.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, if
That's with like like local associations, areas on agency. Like, I know I have a patient who has MS that uses that taps into the MS Society a lot for funds for things like like a ramp outside of their house, like, just so there's a lot. It's just again about being like, we need to be better, especially if you're serving people in home, like resource dealing. Like, we are finding resources for people, and it's hard sometimes to like take that step back to be like, I'm not physically going to be doing something with that person that day, but you'll make a much bigger impact if you can figure out a way for them to get this equipment they need versus like all the bicep curls in the world, you know.
I love that. I mean, you're the kind of you and I would just like.
Have a ball. Like, our patients would not be ready. But they already are. Me and my OT, I have some really fantastic OTs that have helped me, like, just because I'm about 4 or 5 years out of school. So like, they really helped me understand just what occupational therapy is, and then I just continue to work with awesome human beings, and the relationships that we have are just fantastic.
It doesn't just serve your direct patient cares, it serves the community at large for
Mhm.
us communicating. Because I think about like our own families, like what I've been able to do for my family members because I have an OT and I have the knowledge that I've gleaned from my beautiful PTs and
Yeah.
speechies, social workers. And you're right, we are reference guides.
Yep.
First, like I'm gonna provide as much resource as I can, whether that's in written form or verbally or video based or whatever. But if I can leave you with a lot of resources that you can maybe tap into in the future, that is worth its weight in gold.
Yep, absolutely. Now I have to ask, are you using any of the products that you put out on the interwebs, and maybe like give us your top 3 to 5 favorite things that you use? And is
Okay.
Power Wash one of them?
Is which one?
Dawn Power Wash one
Oh,
of them. That's the best. This is a plug for Dawn Power Wash.
if you ain't using it,
If you're not using it, you're missing out on like one of the better cleaning products out there.
it's
So
fantastic. And I tell you, I just found another great use for Dawn Power Wash. If you are in a community that is experiencing high volumes of pollen and you're doing some spring cleaning, it works so well to get the grime off of your screens. If you watch the screens in your windows, because it clings and then it drips. It's so satisfying. Just
okay,
plug.
using Dawn Power Wash, what other things do you use like in your house that you've maybe found on the internet and you're like, actually,
So a few things. A lot of the kitchen stuff I use.
okay,
The Kitchen Mama electric can opener
well, that
that you've probably seen around. It was the very first video I ever made on Instagram was the Kitchen Mama. I love that thing. It is so easy. It's so safe because it cuts the lid off instead of leaving a sharp edge, so I can trust my little ones to use it.
smart.
Both my kids are well versed in it. And another kitchen one that I use pretty much weekly is my chopper. I have a Vidalia chopper, which is like the old school model, but it just like creates really uniform diced objects, and I don't have to like work so hard. And it's another one that's great with kids, so my kids use it. We also, every bathroom in our house has a bidet.
Yep.
We are bidet converts in this house, and I've installed them. So I just recently we're moving my grandmother into a assisted living facility.
Hmm.
And I asked them, because I had my grandma using a bidet. She was having UTI diagnoses every month. We switched her to a bidet. She has not had one since.
Oh my gosh, hygiene people.
Hygiene. She just wasn't getting herself clean. And with the bidet, she was able to get a full rinse, and she's only showering once a week.
Mm-hmm.
So this gave her, so she's like, I smell that.
Never thought about that like that. Wow.
So I have bidets in all of our bathrooms. I love them. I have 3 different types. I love my hands.
That has there's travel ones too. That you
Oh
can,
yeah. Little electric ones. I know I shared one recently, and it was, I mean, it's fantastic. And so I'm a bidet convert. And then the other one is handheld shower heads. Every bathroom, you have dogs. I have a dog. I have children, which they're just the filthiest creatures alive. I don't know how I would ever survive without handheld shower heads.
That's okay.
And then grab bars. I have grab bars in all of our showers, and with little kids.
That's smart. Even with the little ones, these two ends of the spectrum really meet a lot of places. And the little ones, wow, I didn't even think about that. I'm just going to be furiously adding to my baby registry here soon.
I literally have a grab bar, a vertical grab bar that has an attachment for my handheld shower head, so that my handheld shower head is low enough that my kids, who are 5 and 7, can bathe themselves in a shower setting, but the shower head is at their height instead of a dog.
That's so smart. Oh my gosh, you're going to change people's lives here. All right. I had one question from one of my OT counterparts. Any way to manage tiny hearing aids better?
Yeah, so tiny hearing aids it's like eye drops, right? We are, yeah. So depending on the type of the way that they're worn, whether the ones that just go in the ear, like the little seed type, or the ones that go around the back. The around the back ones are significantly easier to manage if you have dexterity issues. So I've actually had people go back, return the small ones to return back to the behind the ear ones, because they were so much easier for low dexterity, specifically for my community with really significant hand issues, whether that was, Parkinson's or whatever. So we would switch. And then the other one is I've used, you want really good, just like you would with dealing with like eye stuff, really, really good lighting, a magnified mirror, so you can see where you're putting it. And then, with the hands, and then, warm, this isn't equipment. Okay. This is where warm the hands up first. So, I learned this in my Parkinson's training, but the finger flicks, 10 finger flicks before trying to do anything with tiny fine motor requirements. Wake up the hands and fingers. Make sure your hands are warm so you have full sensation, so that you can grab, pinch, and place. If you still cannot do it, you can do, they do have like soft tip tweezers. So tweezers that aren't like meant to remove, but they have a little rubber tip on them. And they have like a rubber place to place your fingers, and they're meant for grabbing. They're actually used typically in making models.
Oh, okay.
I can share a link, but they're used for like constructing tiny models for people who make like little battleships and things like that. But they can actually be used because they're soft tipped instead of hard, so they can grab onto hard plastic things to put things in your ear.
And it sounds like such a silly thing for even PTs to listen to, like, because like PTs are like, oh, I don't care about the hearing aids. But like when you go to someone's house time and time again and they're not wearing their hearing aids, and you're yelling and they're saying what you're saying, and they're just like without the hearing aid, you're just so not involved in your environment. Like you're just like you're just very passive in your environment. You can't take in all that great sensory information, which does have like vestibular implications and balance implications. So if you're not wearing that aid, like physical therapy is not going to work as well. So like that, like that is just a perfect example, like right at the end of like how I need to be alert to things like that to be able to go, okay, why are you not putting your hearing aids in? I tell you every time, but seriously, there's something wrong, right? That warrants a referral to OT right there. Like for something as simple as that warrants a referral to occupational therapy. You're going to walk in the room, find about 40 other things to work on, but at least the hearing aid stuff will hopefully be handled. And it's not just like they don't want to do it. I think a lot of PTs just like think our patients just don't listen to us, but there's so many barriers that these folks have, especially older adults, that we
Oh,
just be better like listeners and figure out like the real reasons why things aren't happening, and then get the real professionals in to help with these strategies.
yeah. That's an incredible reminder to all of us that like just because we may see something as behavioral or defiant,
Oh
when in
yeah.
reality there's a barrier. There's a barrier. 9.99 times out of 10, the reason something isn't happening consistently is because there's a barrier, whether it's emotional, physical, cognitive. Um, there's just so many different things that we can be evaluating on a more compassionate level to
Mm-hmm.
provide really, really incredible care. And I thank you for this platform, because I think this type of dialogue is so necessary, because we often, I don't know, if OT and PT kind of get like snippy with each other. We get kind of
I
competitive,
Territorial stuff that happens sometimes.
which is just nonsense.
It really is. I just don't see it honoring like just what our profession can do and like what we can do just to help people in their lives. Like that's a barrier. Like if we're going to be like that, you know? So,
Absolutely.
well, I appreciate all of the work you do putting out all that amazing content. Again, you can be found at EquipMeOT on YouTube and Instagram.
Yes,
And
correct.
have a website too, equipmeot.com as well.
Correct. Yep. And that's where you can find some of the written out forms of the videos if that's a preferred way of translating information.
Perfect. Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate your time today, and this will get put out on the MMOA podcast, and we'll try to pop it onto. I'll make sure this gets transferred over to our community group on Facebook as well. But we so appreciate your time today, and thank you for inspiring us all and being just a wonderful representation of all that occupational therapy can do this month.
I am so happy. Thank you so much.
All right, Lindsay, have a great day.
Thanks. You too.